The rain was beating against the windows in a steady rhythm, creating a dark backdrop for the night. The sound of the droplets against the glass seemed muffled by the thick darkness, while distant lightning briefly illuminated the old, solitary house. Inside, the room was immersed in an unsettling gloom, with only the soft glow of a lampshade breaking the darkness, casting long and distorted shadows on the walls, covered in old paintings. It was the kind of night where fear hid in the crevices and tension seeped into every corner. Alex, Mia, Jordan, and Lily were gathered around a table in the center of the room. Their voices mingled with the sound of the storm, but there was something different in the air, a peculiar energy, as if the wind and the rain were not the only elements with power there. Jordan, the most adventurous of the group, was telling a story with the confidence of someone who had always been the first to take risks, to venture into the unknown. Holding a cup of soda, his voice rose, drawing everyone's attention. And then, if you say her name 3 times in front of the mirror, she appears. But of course, only if you have the courage to try, Jordan said, with a challenging smile on his lips. Mia, always more rational, rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Seriously? A Jordan? This is the most cliché story I've ever heard. It's just an urban legend made to scare kids. Lily, sitting next to Mia, seemed more hesitant, but her eyes were curious. Maybe it's a legend, but I've heard stories of a girl from my cousins. School tried doing it, and they say she disappeared. No one saw her again after that. The mention of the story made Alex, the quietest and most introspective of the group, look up. "This is not something to mess with," he said in a serious tone. "Legends like that exist for a reason. Sometimes there's more truth to them than we'd like to admit." Alex's words hung in the air like a warning. The silence that followed was broken by a distant thunderclap, intensifying the feeling of unease. Jordan, however, didn't seem intimidated. He shrugged, and with a challenging smile, leaned forward. "There's only one way to know if it's true. Let's try." Everyone's eyes turned to him, and the tension in the room became palpable. The clock on the wall seemed to mark the seconds more slowly as Alex looked at the group with an expression of hesitation. He didn't want to do this, especially on a night like this, but the growing curiosity and the challenge in Jordan's gaze were beginning to infect him. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "All right, but if we're doing this, it has to be done the right way." She pointed to the old mirror leaning against the wall on the other side of the room, with its cracked and weathered wooden frame. "Let's use that mirror." Jordan stood up, grabbed the lantern from the table, and walked over to the mirror, inspecting the worn frame and the glass slightly fogged by time. "This mirror seems perfect," he said, with a hint of excitement in his voice. "Almost like it's been waiting for us." Alex crossed his arms, still hesitant. "This is crazy," he murmured, but his voice was drowned out by Jordan and Lily's growing enthusiasm. "We'll need a candle," Lily said, rummaging through a nearby drawer. She found a white candle and a matchbox, placing them on the table. "It has to be like this, right? Turn off all the lights and just use the candle. That's part of the legend, right?" Mia sighed and rested her chin on her hand. "I can't believe we're really doing this," Jordan laughed. "You're going to have fun, Mia, and who knows, maybe you'll even see something." With the candle finally lit, Jordan turned off the lights. The room plunged into almost complete darkness. Only illuminated by the flickering flame of the candle, shadows danced on the walls, creating distorted shapes that seemed to watch the group. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of the rain beating heavily outside. "Okay," Jordan said, holding the candle firmly. "Everyone ready?" He looked at his friends, who were divided between nervousness and curiosity. "Lily, you start." Lily, with trembling hands, picked up the candle and walked up to the mirror. Her eyes were fixed on her reflection, and hesitantly she recited, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." What happened next was something the group would never forget for a moment. Nothing happened. The group waited, hearts pounding, watching Lily's reflection and the candle flame, which seemed to flicker. The air in the room began to feel heavier, as if an invisible presence was filling the space. Jordan let out a nervous laugh, trying to lighten the tension. "See, nothing to it. It's all just nonsense." Mia, crossing her arms, stepped forward. "I told you this was ridiculous. Can we turn the lights on now?" But before anyone could move, the candle flame flickered violently and almost went out. A cold breeze swept through the room, even though all the windows were closed. Lily recoiled, nearly knocking over the candle. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alex stared at the mirror, feeling a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. The shadows around the group seemed denser, darker, as if they were closing in. "Look in the mirror," he whispered. Everyone turned to the mirror, and then they saw it in the depth of the reflection. Behind where their images should have been, there was a figure. It was indistinct, shrouded in a dark mist, but clearly not part of the group. The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, as if they were locked directly on them. Mia screamed and quickly stepped back, while Jordan, in an involuntary movement, leaned closer to the mirror, trying to see better. This has to be some kind of trick," he said. But his voice betrayed the rising fear. The figure in the mirror tilted its head slightly, observing them. Then, with a sudden movement, it disappeared, leaving the mirror empty once more. The air in the room remained heavy, and everyone knew something had changed. Lily, with trembling hands, placed the candle back on the table. What was that?" she whispered, looking to the others for explanations. Alex, in a low voice, said, "I warned you, this is not something to play with." After the manifestation in the mirror, the room seemed even heavier, with a strange energy. Fear lingered in the air. But the silence that followed was even more terrifying. The thunder outside seemed to intensify, as if the very sky was trying to warn them. It was then that Lily began to act differently. Her eyes were fixed on the mirror. Even after the figure had vanished, she appeared oblivious to everything happening around her. Jordan tried to break the tension, forcing a smile. "Maybe it was just our imagination. You know how it is. Scary stories mess with your head." But Lily didn't respond. She was almost in a trance, her eyes still locked on the reflection. Alex approached cautiously. "Lily, are you okay?" He placed his hand on her shoulder, but she flinched at the touch, as though it had burned her. I need a minute," murmured Lily before she ran upstairs. The bathroom door slammed shut, leaving the group in an uncomfortable silence. Mia looked at the others. Something's wrong with her. Ever since she said the name, she's not the same. Jordan, trying to seem reassuring, replied, "She's just nervous. Let's try to relax a little." But Alex, uneasy, knew something was wrong before he could say anything more. A scream tore through the silence of the house, coming from upstairs. Lily's scream, chilling and filled with anguish, made the blood of everyone freeze. They rushed up to the second floor, arriving at the bathroom door, which was locked. When they entered, they found Lily on the floor, trembling, her breath coming in gasps. But the strangest thing was the mirror. It was covered in strange marks, like scratches, forming words that seemed to move. Lily slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were empty. She saw me," she whispered, shivering. Before they could ask more, the mirror, which seemed to pulse unnervingly, reflected something horrifying. The woman's face, with hollow eyes and a sinister smile, appeared once again. But this time, it seemed like she was getting closer. "We need to get out of here," Jordan said, his voice filled with panic. Alex, however, couldn't move. He could feel her presence, an invisible force that separated them. Something even more terrible was coming. "We can't stop now," Alex said, his voice, despite the fear, sounding more determined. "We need to finish the ritual." The figure in the mirror, with her outstretched hand, tried to cross the surface, but Alex, with a scream, threw a small stool at the mirror. making it shatter in a burst of light. The room was engulfed by darkness, and the sound of the shattered mirror echoed throughout the house. As the light faded, the mirror had disappeared, and the air felt lighter. But the sense that the worst was still to come never left the group. Lily lay on the floor, unconscious. Whatever had been unleashed that night seemed to have ended, but the question still hung in the air. Was it truly the end? Or had they merely started something they couldn't control? Silence returned to the house, but the memory of Lily's words, saying she's gone, echoed in everyone's minds as the nightmare seemed to have only been the beginning. The sound of the storm outside began to die down, but the silence in the house felt more deafening than ever. Alex, Jordan, and Mia were crouched beside Lily, trying to wake her, but she was completely unconscious. Her skin was cold, and her breathing was shallow. It was as if the life had been drained from her. "She's not okay," Mia said, her voice filled with concern. She touched Lily's forehead, which was cold as ice. "What happened to her?" Alex looked at the broken mirror, his eyes fixed on the shards scattered across the floor. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He felt the presence of something evil still watching them, even with the mirror destroyed. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or if the worst was yet to come. "We need to get her out of here," Jordan said, his voice tense, his eyes still locked on the shattered mirror. "This place, all of this has something to do with the mirror, this house, this presence." Mia stood up, pulling Jordan away from the broken mirror. "None of this makes sense. Lily can't just change like this, as if she's possessed or something. That's not possible, right?" Alex, his expression dark, replied, "What happened here doesn't have a logical explanation. Something is terribly wrong with that mirror. With this house, I've said it before, these legends have a grain of truth, and I feel like we've just opened a door that should never have been opened." The tension in the room was palpable. Fear was now deeper, more visceral, like an invisible presence surrounding them, waiting for the right moment to strike. But what they didn't know was that the night was just beginning. As they tried to decide what to do next, something strange happened. The candle, which had been at the center of the table, suddenly started flickering again. Despite the wind outside having died down, the flame seemed to dance more intensely, as if it were being fed by something invisible. The shards of glass on the floor also seemed to glow with their own light, reflecting the candle's flame in a strange and unsettling way. "Alex, are you seeing this?" Mia whispered, her gaze fixed on the floor. Alex looked at the shards. The pieces of glass were arranged in a way that he didn't remember leaving them. They weren't just scattered randomly. They formed a pattern, a kind of circle. But the most terrifying part came next. The shards of glass began to move, as if an invisible force was guiding them. Slowly, the pieces of glass came together, forming a perfect line. Suddenly, the reflection they had seen in the mirror before began to appear again, but now it was stronger, clearer. The figure was back, this time more vivid than ever, and seemed closer than before. The figure was smiling, but its smile was not human, was distorted, grotesque, its eyes completely black, fixed on the group, as if it were feeding on their fear. It was no longer behind the mirror. It was now among them. Mia screamed and quickly backed away, hitting the wall behind her. "What's happening? What is this?" "Don't move," Alex said, his voice tense. "We can't let it control us. We need to get out of here, but we need to take Lily with us." Jordan, looking at the figure's reflection, murmured, "It's her. It's not just a reflection. She's here for real." The figure in the mirror kept approaching them, its demonic smile widening. But then, something even more disturbing happened. The figure, with a hissing voice full of hatred, began to speak, but the words were incomprehensible, a low and distorted whisper, as if they were being said inside each of their heads at the same time. And for a moment, Alex had a clear vision. The woman in the mirror was speaking to him, to all of them, but she wasn't alone. She was calling something worse, something older that was trapped in the reflection, waiting for a chance to break free. "She's not alone," Alex shouted, pulling away from the mirror and trying to drag Lily, still lying on the floor, toward the door. But the invisible force of the figure seemed to be trying to trap them all in the room. Shadows began to stretch toward the group, swallowing everything as they got closer. The sound of the wind outside intensified in a terrifying way, like a distant, almost human scream. The doors and windows of the house began to tremble, as if they were about to break apart. Chaos was imminent. "Mia! Jordan, let's go! Now!" Alex shouted, grabbing Lily by the shoulders and trying to pull her away from the center of the room, but their feet seemed stuck to the floor, as if the very environment was trying to hold them there. The mirror, now almost completely reconstructed, began to glow intensely, as if a supernatural force were being channeled into it. The figure in the reflection stretched and distorted, its hands reaching out, trying to grab the group. The shadow behind it grew larger and larger, taking shape, and Alex felt an overwhelming presence, as if pure evil itself were trying to materialize into flesh and bone. "We need to destroy the mirror," Jordan shouted, running toward the shards and grabbing a piece of glass. But before he could get any closer, a wave of energy seemed to push him back. He fell to the ground hard, and Mia's scream of terror echoed through the house. "It won't matter," the figure spoke, its voice distorted, even closer than before. "It's too late for you." The mirror finally completed itself, but it was no longer the reflection of a woman. Now, it was a crack, a portal to a world beyond comprehension, and something began to emerge from it. The presence that emerged from the mirror was enormous, a living shadow with no defined form, but an absolute will to dominate everything. Alex and his friends were terrified, but seeing Lily still motionless on the floor, something awakened within them. They couldn't just let this happen. "Lily, wake up!" Alex shouted, shaking her as the shadows around the room drew closer and closer. But Lily didn't move. Then, in a desperate act, Alex grabbed the shard of glass and raised it, aiming at the center of the mirror. "I know I can't defeat this, but at least I'll try," Alex murmured to himself, feeling a strength that seemed to come from the depths of his soul. He ran toward the mirror, the glass in his hand. When he was only a few steps away, a wave of energy hit him, nearly knocking him down. But he didn't give up. With all the strength he had left, he shattered the mirror in one swift blow. The house trembled, and the energy that had been consuming everything dissipated with a snap, sealing the portal. The figure disappeared, and the shadows dissipated as if they had never existed, but the price was high. The mirror was destroyed, but what happened that night would never be forgotten. Lily finally woke up, her eyes wide and haunted, her expression filled with absolute fear. They're still there, they're waiting. The terror of that night, which should have been just a legend, left its mark. Something was unleashed, and even with the mirror destroyed, fear and mystery would never leave them in peace. The house, the mirror, and the presence that emerged that night were not just part of a story. They were real, and no one knew for sure if what happened in that house had truly come to an end. But then, I ask you, was what happened in that house merely fiction, a story told to frighten? Or was there really something darker behind all of this? What do you believe? Are the mirror, the portal, and the shadows just products of our imagination? Or is there some truth behind this story? Comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories that challenge the line between the real and the imaginary. Until next time, or perhaps never again.